I was 35 when I finally stopped trying to earn my family's approval. It wasn't a dramatic declaration or anything, just a quiet realization that no matter what I did, I'd always be the second best son. My name's Ryan, and I guess if you asked my parents, I'm the disappointment who moved too far, worked too much, and never calls. That's what mom likes to say, usually followed by a half laugh that makes it sound like a joke. Except it's not. Growing up, everything revolved around my younger brother, Adam. He was the golden child from the moment he could form a sentence. He got straight A's after mom helped him with every project, played varsity basketball after dad paid for private coaching, and somehow earned a brand new car at 16. When I questioned it, dad said, "Well, Ryan, not everyone's as independent as you." Translation, you're on your own. So I worked part-time jobs, paid for college myself, and built something from scratch. It wasn't glamorous at first, a small logistics startup that ran out of a shared office space. I spent years surviving on ramen and gas station coffee. Meanwhile, Adam bounced between hobbies, startups, and girlfriends, each one ending with a tearful phone call to mom about how the world was against him. And every time, the family rallied behind him. By my late 20s, I'd quietly grown that struggling startup into a thriving company. I bought my first house, invested in a couple of rental properties, and even started managing some of my parents' assets, at their request, ironically. They never asked how I afforded anything. They just assumed I got lucky. I didn't correct them. Let them believe luck was my co-founder. Then, last month, mom called with that familiar tone she uses when she wants something. "Sweetheart," she said, dragging out the word. "We're all meeting for dinner next Friday. At that new place downtown, the Lantern. Everyone's coming. You have to be there." Normally, I'd find an excuse. Work trip, late meeting, anything. But something in her voice made me pause. I hadn't seen the whole family in nearly a year, and maybe, stupidly, I thought things could be different. When I arrived, the table was already full. Mom, Dad, Adam, his fiancée, two of my aunts, an uncle, and even Grandma. There were half-finished glasses of wine, loud laughter, and the faint sound of music from the bar. The second I stepped in, conversation died down for a beat, just long enough for me to notice how everyone's smiles looked a little too forced. "Ryan, you made it." Mom stood up, air-kissing me like we were strangers at a charity gala. "Of course," I said, setting down the bottle of wine I'd brought. "Wouldn't miss it." Adam leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Fancy seeing you here, big shot. Didn't think you remembered where we eat." "Nice to see you too," I said evenly, taking a seat. Dinner started pleasantly enough, though the conversation was one-sided. They asked Adam about his new venture, a podcast about financial freedom for creatives. Mom called it visionary. Dad said, "He's got that entrepreneurial spirit, just like his brother." The difference was, I'd actually done it. When the food arrived, Dad raised his glass. "To family," he said, "even if some of us forget where we came from." Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. I smiled politely, staring at my plate. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, steamed vegetables, perfectly arranged, but somehow cold. Halfway through the meal, Dad stood up again. His face was flushed, either from the wine or the attention he clearly enjoyed. All right," he said, waving a hand. "Let's make this a night to remember." He looked around the table like he was about to announce a surprise engagement. Mom clasped her hands dramatically, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Your mother and I have been thinking," Dad began, his tone heavy with self-importance. "We're not getting any younger, and we want to make sure everything's taken care of when we're gone." Adam straightened up, his grin widening. Grandma frowned slightly, as if she already knew what was coming. "So," Dad continued, "we've decided to leave everything. The house, the savings, the shares, to Adam. He's the only one who's ever made us proud." The room fell silent for half a second, then erupted. Mom clapped like a game show audience member. One aunt actually said, "About time." Adam stood up and did a mock bow. I sat there, fork in hand, pulse steady. Not angry, not sad, just numb. Dad looked at me expectantly. "You understand, right, son? You've got your own thing. You don't need our help." "Right," I said softly. "I don't." That seemed to satisfy him. He grinned and sat down. The conversation picked up again, laughter filling the air, everyone pretending it was just another family dinner. But inside, something shifted. I looked at each of them. Their smug faces, their fake smiles, their shallow congratulations, and realized just how small their world really was. They thought pride was measured in approval, success in inheritance. I didn't say another word. When the waiter came by, I excused myself to take a call, left cash for my portion, and walked out. The cool air outside hit me like a reset button. I stood on the sidewalk for a while, watching the restaurant's glowing windows and hearing faint echoes of laughter from inside. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like someone finally watching a movie he no longer wanted to be in. 2 days later, my phone buzzed nonstop. Missed calls, texts, dozens of notifications from the family group chat. It started with, "Dad, what is going on with the house title?" Then Mom, "Ryan, did you do something? The lawyer says everything's been transferred to you." And then Adam, in all caps, "Dude, tell me this is a joke." I opened the messages slowly, my reflection faintly visible on the phone screen. The same face they said never made them proud. I took a breath, leaned back in my chair, and watched as message after message came in, each more frantic than the last. Then, one by one, the group chat exploded. And that's when things really started to get interesting. When I was younger, I used to think that if I worked hard enough, I could earn my parents' respect. That maybe one day they'd look at me and see someone worth being proud of. But after that dinner, after watching them cheer as my father publicly disowned me in favor of my brother, I stopped believing that. And when their messages started flooding in, part of me felt a little satisfaction. Not because I wanted revenge, but because, for once, they were the ones confused, scrambling, and powerless. Still, I didn't respond. Not yet. By the next morning, I had 12 missed calls from Dad, 9 from Mom, and a string of texts from Adam. His tone started calm. "Hey man, Dad's freaking out about something. Did you maybe file something by accident?" Then more demanding. "Okay, seriously, what's going on with the business account? I can't log in." By noon, he'd resorted to, "You think this is funny? You're gonna regret messing with us." I ignored every message. Instead, I went about my day like normal, coffee, emails, meetings. It was strangely peaceful, watching them spiral while I sat in quiet control. For context, my parents had never been good with money. They came from modest backgrounds, and when Dad's small construction company started doing well in the early 2000s, he got reckless. Big house, luxury car, country club membership. He loved appearances. But by the time I finished college, the business was sinking under debt. I'd stepped in to help, set up a new structure, got the accounts in order, even put my own name on a few assets temporarily to help consolidate things legally. They signed off on everything back then because I was the numbers guy. They didn't read the fine print. Years passed. I paid off loans, refinanced the house, grew their business using my network, and even created a holding company to keep everything tidy. On paper, it made sense for me to be the managing partner. They never asked questions. As long as the lifestyle stayed intact, they were happy. And now? Well, that structure was still in place. Everything they thought was theirs had been legally under my umbrella for years. When Dad finally cornered me 2 days later, it wasn't calm. He showed up at my office unannounced. My assistant buzzed me. Ryan, there's an older gentleman here. Says he's your father." "He's loud." I sighed. "Send him in." The door burst open before I could stand. "What is this?" Dad barked, slamming a folder on my desk. Inside were printouts of property titles, company filings, and a recent account statement, all bearing my name. "You've got some nerve," he continued. "Your mother and I trusted you with this paperwork. And now you've, what, stolen everything from us." I kept my voice steady. "I didn't steal anything, Dad. Everything's been structured like this for years. You signed off on every document." "That was for tax purposes," he yelled. "Temporary. You were supposed to put it back." I leaned forward slightly. "You never asked me to." His face turned red, a vein pulsing near his temple. "You think this is funny? You think you can humiliate me in front of my own family?" I didn't answer. Because honestly, he'd humiliated himself. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "Undo it, Ryan. Now, or I swear You'll what?" I said quietly. "Call your lawyer? Go ahead. He'll confirm it's all legal. I've protected you from bankruptcy for years. Maybe you should thank me." His jaw clenched. He didn't like being reminded of that part, the fact that without my intervention, his empire would have collapsed a decade ago. "Unbelievable," he muttered, storming out of my office. As the door slammed, I heard him snap at my assistant. You work for a snake. That night, Mom called. Her tone was softer, but no less manipulative. Ryan, honey, she started, using that sugary voice I'd grown up hating. You know your father's temper. He didn't mean all those things. He's just hurt. Hurt. I repeated. He stood up in a restaurant and announced I wasn't part of the family. Oh, he was joking, she said quickly. You know how he is. Don't take it so seriously. We were just celebrating Adam's new phase of life. By cutting me out of the will. There was a pause. Well, we just thought he needed it more. I exhaled through my nose, trying not to laugh. You mean, you thought I'd be fine without you? That I'd keep helping no matter what? Ryan, please don't twist things. We love you both. You love what I do for you, I said flatly. Not me. Her silence told me I'd hit the mark. Before hanging up, she tried one last guilt trip. You're breaking this family apart, Ryan. Is that what you want? No, I said calmly. I just want to stop pretending there was one to begin with. Over the next week, the tension grew. Adam began sending group messages, long, dramatic ones filled with blame. Bro, you've gone too far. Mom's been crying nonstop. Dad's talking about selling his car because you froze the accounts. Are you proud of yourself? I didn't respond to any of it. Meanwhile, relatives started picking sides. Aunt Lisa called me a heartless traitor in the group chat. Uncle Joe, who I barely spoke to, sent a private message. Good for you. They've been using you for years. Even Grandma called one afternoon, her voice trembling. Ryan, dear, I don't understand what's happening, but please don't let them turn you cruel. You've always been the kind one. That one stung, because she was the only person in that family who'd ever treated me fairly. At the same time, Mom and Dad kept up appearances publicly. They told friends and neighbors it was all a misunderstanding, while quietly begging me to reverse the legal transfers. They even sent an email titled Family Reconciliation Agreement, drafted by some cousin who'd taken a few business law courses. It basically said I'd return everything in good faith once Dad stabilized the accounts. I didn't even dignify it with a reply. But behind the scenes, things started unraveling for them fast. Their credit cards, tied to company funds, stopped working. The utilities at the big house came under my management, and late payments started bouncing back to me. I didn't cut them off entirely, not yet. I just let the paperwork stand. Let the truth sink in slowly. One night, I got a call from Adam. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I said. He didn't waste time. You can't do this, man. You're ruining everything. Mom's losing it. I'm not doing anything. You guys did this to yourselves. He groaned. You've always been so dramatic. Just give the house back. It's theirs. It's not, I said simply. It's under my name. Always has been. You're unbelievable, he spat. They gave you everything growing up, and this is how you repay them? I actually laughed. They gave me nothing, Adam. Remember the used bike I got for my 16th birthday while you got a car with a bow on it? Or when they paid your college tuition but told me to learn responsibility? You call that giving. Stop living in the past, he snapped. They chose me because I care about this family. You just care about control. Control? I said quietly. You mean boundaries. There was a long silence before he said, You think you're so much better than everyone. Well, guess what? You're not. Then he hung up. I stared at the screen, half smiling. Because if there's one thing people like my brother can't stand, it's losing power. Over the next few days, Mom tried new tactics. She sent photos of the family, old ones, from when we were kids, captioned with things like, Remember when we were happy? Then she switched to emotional manipulation. We might lose the house, Ryan. Your father's health isn't good. Is this what you want? She even called my office pretending to be a client just to get me on the line. When I picked up and realized it was her, she whispered, You're killing us, sweetheart. It was exhausting, the way they twisted everything into guilt. But it also reaffirmed something. They didn't want reconciliation, they wanted compliance. Then, about a week later, Dad sent one final message. If you don't fix this by Monday, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of son you are. That was the moment I knew it was going to get ugly. Because he didn't realize, I was just getting started. Sunday night, I got an unexpected knock at my door. Not a text, not a call, an actual knock. The kind that makes you pause mid-step because something about it feels deliberate. I looked through the peephole and saw my parents standing there. Mom held a folder against her chest like a shield. Dad had that same scowl he used to wear when he'd catch me talking back as a teenager. I considered not opening the door, but part of me wanted to see just how far they were willing to go. I unlocked it slowly. You could have called. Mom forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. We thought it'd be better to talk face to face, honey. Dad brushed past her and stepped into the house without waiting for permission. Enough games, Ryan. Sit down. It was surreal, standing in my own living room, being ordered around like a child again. I stayed standing. He dropped a stack of papers on my coffee table. We talked to our lawyer. We know what you did. What I did? I asked, my tone calm. You transferred everything under your name, he said, his voice rising. You've been plotting this for years. I almost laughed at that. Plotting? You mean managing the assets you begged me to stabilize? Mom quickly jumped in, trying to play mediator. Ryan, please. We know things got complicated, but we can fix this. Just sign the reversal paperwork. We'll make sure everyone knows it was all just a misunderstanding. Everyone. I repeated. You mean your friends? The same ones you've been lying to about how well Adam's business is doing. Her face tightened, but she didn't deny it. Dad stepped closer. Enough. You're not smarter than me, son. You think some fancy lawyer is going to save you when you're stealing from your own parents? I'm not stealing, I said quietly. I'm protecting what's mine. What I built. What you handed me to clean up after you nearly ruined it. His nostrils flared. You ungrateful. Mom cut him off. Harold. Then she turned back to me. Ryan, listen to me. You've made your point, all right? You've embarrassed us. You've scared us. Congratulations. You win. Now please, just give it back. There it was again. Give it back. As if I'd taken something that was rightfully theirs. I shook my head slowly. No. Dad's voice turned cold. Then I hope you're ready for what comes next. They left soon after, but not before Dad muttered something about making me pay. I didn't take it seriously, at least not until the next morning. When I woke up, my phone was blowing up with notifications again, but this time, they weren't from family. They were from clients. Emails. Dozens of them. Subject lines like urgent, contract termination, and concerns about company reputation. My heart dropped. I opened one. It was from a longtime partner who'd worked with my firm for years. Ryan, I received troubling information this morning about alleged financial misconduct tied to your name and your company. Until we get clarity, we're suspending all collaboration. I opened another. Same tone. Same vague accusation. By the fifth one, I realized what had happened. They'd gone public. My parents, my own flesh and blood, had started spreading rumors that I'd embezzled money from them. There were posts on Facebook, long paragraphs written by Mom about family betrayal, about how I'd stolen the roof over their heads. She framed it like some tragic story of parents being scammed by their greedy son who thinks he's better than everyone. Dad commented under it. He used our trust to take everything. Pray for us. Dozens of relatives and family friends flooded the comments with sympathy. I can't believe he'd do that to his parents. So heartbreaking. Money changes people. And the worst part? They tagged my business page. In less than 24 hours, the post had hundreds of shares. My inbox filled with messages, some supportive, most judgmental. That morning, I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the screen, the weight of it all pressing down. I'd spent years building my reputation from nothing. Every late night, every negotiation, every client I'd earned through trust. And now, a few lies from the people who should have been in my corner were threatening to destroy it all. Around noon, Adam called. Bro, he started, fake sympathy dripping from his voice. I told them not to do it, man. But they're just so hurt. You really blindsided them. I stayed silent. He continued. Look, if you just give the stuff back, we can fix this. Delete the posts. Issue a public apology. Say it was a miscommunication. Miscommunication? I finally said. They accused me of theft. Yeah, well, they're emotional. You know how Mom gets. I could almost hear the smirk in his tone. He was enjoying this. Let me guess, I said. You helped them write it. He hesitated for half a second too long. I might have helped them phrase it better. But come on, man, you brought this on yourself. That was it. The last piece clicked into place. It wasn't just my parents. Adam was orchestrating it. The golden child who could do no wrong, the one they always bailed out, had found a new way to play the victim while turning me into the villain. I hung up without another word. That afternoon, my assistant, Maya, knocked gently on my office door. Ryan, there's something you should see. She held up her phone. There was a video, shaky, taken on someone's phone. My dad, standing in front of their house, giving a teary speech about losing everything because of his own son's greed. Mom stood beside him, dabbing fake tears. Adam filmed, occasionally chiming in. Tell them how he took your business, Dad. It was posted on social media with the caption, "When family betrays you for money." I felt something inside me twist, not anger exactly, but something heavier. A deep, cold disbelief. For a moment, I thought about calling them, confronting them directly. But what would I even say? The people on that video weren't the same parents who raised me. They were performers now, acting out a tragedy they'd written to protect their own pride. The fallout was fast. Within 48 hours, 2 more clients froze their contracts. A journalist from a local paper emailed me asking for a statement. My company's PR inbox filled with requests for comment. Maya looked at me across the desk, concern written all over her face. What do we do? I leaned back, forcing myself to breathe. We don't do anything yet. She frowned. You're just going to let them drag you like this? Not forever, I said quietly. But I'm not playing defense. Not this time. That night, I got one more message from Mom. You could have avoided all this if you'd just done the right thing. We gave you life. You owe us. That line, "You owe us," echoed in my head for hours. Because that was the truth behind everything. They didn't want fairness. They wanted obedience. They wanted to own me, just like they thought they owned everything else. I didn't reply. I didn't sleep, either. I stayed up reading through old documents, pulling up years of emails, contracts, and receipts. Every favor I'd done, every debt I'd covered, every legal signature they'd scribbled without bothering to read. And by morning, I realized something that made my pulse quicken. In their rush to smear my name, they'd made a mistake, a big one. The kind that could flip everything in my favor. Because while they'd been too busy posting their little sob story, they'd publicly admitted to details that proved they'd known about every single transfer all along. And that was my leverage. But I didn't move on it yet. Not immediately. Because part of revenge isn't just winning. It's letting the other side believe they're safe. And my family, my so-called family, had no idea that the storm they started was about to come back their way, stronger than they could imagine. The next week felt like slow-motion freefall. Every morning, I woke up to new chaos, more calls from clients, more articles quoting my parents' heartbreaking story, and more relatives sending me long-winded messages about forgiveness. I'd become the villain of a narrative I didn't even write. At first, I thought I could weather it. That truth would surface on its own. But the thing about rumors is that they spread faster than facts, especially when they come wrapped in tears and nostalgia. My parents knew exactly which strings to pull. The newspaper article was the breaking point. The headline read, "Local couple claims son stole family business in shocking betrayal." It included screenshots of public posts, cropped text messages taken out of context, and even a quote from Adam, calling me a man so obsessed with control that he forgot what love looks like. I remember sitting in my car outside the office, the paper folded on the passenger seat, rain streaking down the windshield. My reflection stared back at me in the glass, eyes hollow, shoulders heavy. For the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely defeated. Inside, the office was tense. People whispered when I walked past. Some avoided eye contact. Maya did her best to keep things afloat, but even she looked worried. At lunch, she came into my office quietly. "Ryan," she said, "I think you should see this." She turned her laptop around. It was a Reddit thread, thousands of comments under the same story my parents had told the press. Strangers debating whether I was a monster or just misunderstood. Someone even dug up an old photo of me at a charity event and captioned it, "He looks smug even here." I let out a small, humorless laugh. Amazing. They've turned it into a full-blown morality play. Maya hesitated. "Are you sure you don't want to issue a statement?" "No," I said. "Not yet." The truth was, I couldn't. Not without looking defensive. Not without confirming details that might backfire. The internet doesn't care about nuance. It cares about spectacle. And right now, my family was the ringmaster. Over the next few days, things got worse. My parents froze me out of family communication, creating a new group chat without me. Family only. As if I weren't blood. My cousins joined the parade of passive-aggressive posts, quotes about greed destroying families and how money reveals true character. The silence from my grandmother, however, hurt the most. She didn't post anything, didn't call, didn't write. Just silence. And somehow, that quiet disappointment from the one person I respected most cut deeper than all the lies combined. I didn't tell anyone, but there were nights I almost drove to their house. Not to yell, but just to ask why. To stand there, face to face, and ask how they could twist something so profoundly. But every time I thought about it, I remembered the look on my dad's face in that restaurant. That smug satisfaction when he announced I wasn't worthy of their pride. No, they made their choice. By Friday, I was mentally done. Physically too. I left work early, drove aimlessly until I ended up by the water. The city lights reflected off the waves, and for the first time in years, I felt small, like all my success, all my effort, meant nothing if the people who raised me could tear it down in a week. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at the water, until my phone buzzed again. It was an unknown number. The message said, "Mr. Brooks, this is Jonathan from Holloway and Pierce. Your father just attempted to transfer ownership of the construction firm's vehicles and accounts. You're listed as the controlling shareholder. Would you like us to block the move?" For a second, I couldn't even process it. Then it clicked. They weren't just smearing me publicly. They were actively trying to take everything back. That's when something in me shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe clarity. But for the first time since the whole mess began, I felt calm. Because I realized what I was dealing with wasn't a family problem anymore. It was a business one. And business, at least, I understood. I told the lawyer to block all transfers immediately. Then I spent the entire night reviewing documents, verifying every account, every signature, every asset. The deeper I went, the more I realized how reckless they'd become. In their desperation, they'd crossed lines that couldn't be blurred away. Unauthorized withdrawals, fake invoices, and attempts to bypass shareholder rights. By dawn, I had enough evidence to bury them legally if I wanted to. But I wasn't going to rush. Revenge done right isn't loud. It's strategic. The following week, I started rebuilding, not just the business's reputation, but my own center of gravity. I stopped reading the comments. I shut down social media. I met with clients face to face, explained the situation calmly, and showed them proof. Some left anyway. Others stayed, quietly impressed by how composed I was. The losses stung, but oddly, I started feeling lighter. One afternoon, Maya came into my office again. "You look different," she said, setting down my coffee. "Different how?" "Like someone who's not scared anymore." I smiled faintly. Maybe I finally remembered who I am. It wasn't about defending myself anymore. It was about regaining my focus, the same focus that got me here in the first place. So I threw myself into work. Late nights, new deals, expansions I'd postponed because I was too busy keeping my family's affairs in order. I stopped being their unpaid safety net and started being what I'd always been good at, a builder. Meanwhile, word started spreading that my parents' finances were collapsing. Without access to the business accounts, they couldn't sustain their lavish lifestyle. The big house, mortgage overdue, their country club membership, suspended. Adam's podcast studio, quietly shut down after 3 missed payments. They'd spent so long depending on me that they'd forgotten how to survive without me. But I didn't gloat. Not yet. Because deep down, I still hoped they'd wake up, that maybe losing control would make them reflect. Then came the message that changed everything. It was from Grandma. Short, simple, written in her careful, old-fashioned way. "Ryan, I need to see you. Don't tell your parents." I drove to her house that same evening. When she opened the door, she looked friendlier than I remembered, but her eyes were sharp, the same blue-gray that used to soften whenever she'd defend me as a kid. We sat in her small living room, the faint scent of lavender filling the air. "I know you didn't do what they're saying," she began softly. "Your father came here last week, ranting about betrayal. But I remember the papers you showed me years ago, how you fixed their mess after the recession." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "They won't listen." She nodded slowly. "They never do. They confuse pride with love. Always have." There was a pause. Then she reached for a small wooden box on the table and handed it to me. Inside were documents, handwritten notes, old receipts, even copies of agreements my father had signed. "I kept these," she said, "just in case they ever turned on you. I hoped it wouldn't come to that." I sat there in stunned silence. "Why would you keep them?" Her eyes glistened. "Because I knew one day you'd need proof that you were the honest one." Something cracked inside me then. Not anger, not bitterness, just relief. For the first time, someone believed me without needing an explanation. As I drove home that night, the box on the passenger seat, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: purpose. Because now I wasn't just surviving. I had leverage. I didn't plan to use it immediately. I wanted them to stew in their self-made chaos a little longer. But I started laying quiet groundwork, meeting with attorneys, restructuring ownership papers so no one could ever touch them again, transferring digital records into secure storage. Every step I took was silent, deliberate, methodical. And all the while, my family kept spiraling publicly, arguing in comment sections, contradicting themselves, revealing more than they realized. One night, I got another call from Adam. This time, his tone was shaky, less arrogant. "Mom and Dad are losing it, man," he said. "They're blaming each other. The bills are piling up. Can't you just, I don't know, fix this?" I let the silence stretch for a few seconds before saying, "I already did. You just didn't like how." He exhaled sharply. "You're really going to let your own parents fall apart?" "I didn't let them fall," I said quietly. "They jumped." For once, he didn't have a comeback. When the call ended, I sat back and looked around my office. It felt different now, not like a battlefield, but like a fortress. I'd hit rock bottom. They'd taken everything they could: my reputation, my peace, my name, and yet I was still standing. Stronger, sharper, colder maybe, but focused. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Because my parents thought they'd humiliated me. But what they didn't realize was that humiliation, when endured quietly, becomes fuel. And I was done playing defense. The storm had passed, but the wreckage it left behind was exactly what I needed. My parents' campaign of lies had burned every bridge they once stood on. Their friends avoided them. The family gossip machine turned inward, and Adam, Mr. Financial Freedom Guru, was suddenly very quiet online. In their desperation to destroy me, they destroyed their own credibility. And I was patient enough to let them finish the job before I even lifted a finger. For weeks, I stayed quiet. Not a single public statement, no angry responses, no online brawls. Just silence. People mistook it for guilt, but really, it was strategy. Because while they ranted and cried for attention, I was working behind the scenes with my attorney, building something far more permanent than a rebuttal post. My grandmother's box of papers turned out to be a gold mine, literally and legally. Among the notes were signed letters acknowledging every temporary transfer of property and assets to my name. They even thanked me for personally guaranteeing family stability. That phrasing? My lawyer nearly smiled when he saw it. "This isn't just protection, Ryan," he said. "It's admission." He was right. My parents had unknowingly written their own confession years ago. But I wasn't looking to sue them. Not yet. I wanted something cleaner, something poetic. So I waited until their finances reached critical failure. The mortgage company had started foreclosure proceedings. Their credit cards were maxed out. Adam's lease on his apartment had expired, and he was crashing at their house, posting motivational quotes about tough times building strong people. The irony was almost too much. Then, one Friday morning, my lawyer called. "Ryan, just confirming. You still hold the master deed on the house, correct?" "Correct," I said, sipping my coffee. "And the grace period on their payments ended last week." "Also correct." He paused. "Then technically, you're within your rights to initiate repossession." I looked out my window, the city stretching beneath me in quiet rhythm. "Let's do it." He hesitated. "You sure? This will get messy." "It's already messy," I said. "Let's just make it official." Within 48 hours, legal notices were issued. My parents' home, the same one where Dad announced to a cheering table that I'd never made them proud, was now under my control again. Of course, they didn't read the fine print. They thought the notice was a scam until an actual property manager showed up. I didn't find out how they reacted until Adam called me, voice trembling with fury. "You can't be serious," he yelled. "They just got served. Are you actually kicking your parents out of their house?" "I'm enforcing ownership," I said evenly. "You're heartless, man. They're broke. They're scared. Then they should have thought of that before turning me into their villain." He laughed bitterly. "You think this makes you the good guy? Everyone's gonna hate you for this." I smiled faintly. "They already do. The difference now is, I don't care." He cursed under his breath and hung up. 2 days later, Mom called. Her voice cracked between anger and fear. "Ryan, please. Your father isn't well. This stress is killing him." Can't you just give us more time? I leaned back, my tone calm. You had years of time. You used it to humiliate me. It was a misunderstanding, she cried. You're twisting everything. No, I said softly. You are. And you've been doing it since the day I was born. She went quiet. For the first time, I think she realized the old emotional tricks didn't work anymore. I never wanted this, she whispered. Neither did I replied. But you made your choice when you went to the media. The call ended in silence. By the following week, the eviction date was confirmed. But I wasn't cruel. I arranged temporary housing through one of the companies and used rental properties, fully furnished and prepaid for 6 months. I didn't do it for them. I did it for Grandma. She'd asked me, during one of our last talks, to leave room for grace. So I did. Barely. When they moved out, neighbors watched from their lawns as boxes and furniture were loaded into trucks. Mom sobbed for the cameras she'd once used to broadcast her victimhood. Dad avoided looking at me. And Adam, standing near the curb, muttered something under his breath that I didn't catch. Probably another excuse, another attempt to make me the villain in his story. I didn't speak to them, didn't gloat, just signed the final transfer forms and handed the manager the keys. That night, I walked through the empty house alone. The echo of my footsteps filled rooms that used to hold laughter, tension, and so many arguments I'd tried to forget. There were faint marks on the wall where family photos once hung, smiling faces that looked so different from the people they'd become. I stood in the dining room for a long time, staring at the spot where Dad had made his little announcement. It felt poetic in a way, standing there now, the legal owner of the same home where they'd publicly decided I wasn't worthy. For the first time, I didn't feel bitter. I just felt done. But revenge, as satisfying as it was, still wasn't complete. Because even though I now owned everything, the world still thought I was the thief. My parents' lies had lived rent-free in people's minds for months, and I wasn't about to let that stand. So I called a journalist. Not one of the gossip chasers who'd published the smear. No, this was an investigative reporter I'd worked with before on charity projects. I told him I had documents, real ones, and that I was finally ready to share my side. He hesitated at first, worried about the family angle. But once I sent him the proof, legal filings, signed acknowledgments, digital audit trails, his tone changed. This isn't a rebuttal, he said. This is a dismantling. The article dropped a week later. Son accused of stealing family business provides evidence of decade-long mismanagement and forged records. It went viral in hours. Not because of my name, but because it was such a complete reversal of the story everyone thought they knew. Screenshots of my parents' contradictions spread everywhere. One post they'd made claimed they never gave permission. Another admitted, we trusted him to manage things. Commenters pieced together their inconsistencies like detectives. Within a day, sympathy turned to shock. Within 2, it turned to ridicule. The same people who once called me a heartless son were now commenting things like, so they lied about everything, and imagine raising a kid who saves your finances and then framing him for it. Even Adam's fans on his podcast page turned on him, flooding his posts with clown emojis and calling him out for enabling the smear. I didn't post a single word. I didn't need to. The truth did all the talking for me. A week later, I got one final call from Grandma. I saw the article, she said, voice soft but steady. You did what you had to do. I didn't want to hurt them, I admitted. I just wanted them to stop hurting me. They'll never understand, she said. But now the world does. And maybe that's enough. She paused. Ryan, promise me one thing. What's that? Don't let this make you bitter. Some people stay blind their whole lives. You just finally stopped living in the dark with them. Her words stayed with me. Because even though I'd won, legally, financially, publicly, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure. And in that quiet, steady moment, I realized revenge isn't about destruction. It's about liberation. Still, there was one last thing left to do. Something that would finally put everything to rest and maybe, just maybe, make them see exactly what they'd lost. Fallout came slower than I expected. Not the explosive kind that tears through everything at once, but the quieter, more humiliating kind that drags people down day by day, until they have nothing left but the echo of their own choices. After the article went viral, my parents disappeared from social media entirely. The Facebook posts were deleted, the videos vanished, and the family friends who used to comment, "So proud of you too," stopped calling altogether. Their silence wasn't loyalty, It was self-preservation. Nobody wanted to be associated with a scandal that had flipped so publicly. Adam tried to hold out longer. He posted a half-hearted video on his podcast page titled The Truth About My Brother. He talked about misunderstandings, about family disagreements blown out of proportion. He didn't mention the forged transfers, or the lies, or the fact that he'd been part of the smear campaign. But the damage was already done. The comments were merciless. So, no apology? Didn't you help your parents post the fake story? Bro, the receipts are out there. Just stop. Within a week, he took the video down. The next time I checked, his channel was gone entirely. I didn't celebrate. I just watched. Watched how the people who'd laughed at me across that dinner table now lived under the shadow of their own humiliation. Watched the way karma moved. Not in anger, but in quiet precision. The house I'd repossessed was still technically mine, though I hadn't decided what to do with it yet. Part of me wanted to sell it, just to close the chapter. Another part wanted to let it sit empty, a hollow monument to everything that went wrong. But fate had a different idea. One afternoon, I got a call from the property manager. "Hey, Mr. Brooks," he said cautiously. "You should probably come down here." When I arrived, a small moving truck was parked out front. Mom and Dad stood by the curb, arguing in low, frantic tones. Adam was there too, pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. They looked smaller somehow, like the years of control and confidence had melted off them. The manager pulled me aside. "They're trying to move back in," he whispered. "Said you gave them permission." I looked over at them. My mother noticed me first. Her face softened, the way it always did when she was about to manipulate. "Ryan," she called, walking toward me. "Thank God you're here. We've had nowhere to go. The rental's lease ended, and the landlord. Well, you know how people are once they read things online." Dad stood behind her, eyes full of restrained anger. "You've made your point," he said flatly. "Now be a man and give this family back their home." I took a slow breath. "This isn't your home anymore." Mom blinked. "Don't say that." "You said it first," I replied. "That night at the restaurant, remember? You told everyone I wasn't part of the family. You laughed while they clapped." Her lips trembled. "That was a mistake." "No," I interrupted. "It was the most honest thing you've ever said." Dad took a step forward. "Watch your tone." I met his glare evenly. "Or what? You'll post another video? Call the police? Go ahead. I'll show them the paperwork." For once, he had no comeback. Adam finally chimed in. "Come on, man. We're all tired. Can't we just move on?" "Move on?" I repeated. "You mean forget? Pretend none of it happened?" He shrugged helplessly. "What do you want, Ryan? For us to crawl? To beg?" I didn't answer right away, because part of me wanted exactly that. I wanted them to understand what it felt like to be humiliated, betrayed, dismissed. But another part of me, the tired, quiet part, knew that no apology would ever feel enough. Some debts can't be paid back with words. I turned to the manager. "Let them grab their things. But once they're done, I want the locks changed." Mom gasped softly. "Ryan, please." I didn't look at her. "You have 1 hour." When I walked away, she called after me, voice breaking. "We're still your parents." I stopped but didn't turn around. "You stopped being that the day you turned me into a headline." That was the last thing I ever said to them face to face. Over the following months, I heard bits and pieces through distant relatives. They'd moved into a small rental outside the city. Dad tried consulting again, but nobody wanted to hire him after the public fiasco. Mom picked up part-time work at a local boutique, pretending it was just for fun. Adam vanished into gig work, driving, freelancing, anything that paid the bills. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was consequence. And while they struggled to rebuild a fraction of the image they destroyed, I kept growing. My company expanded into new regions. Clients who had doubted me came back, impressed by how I'd handled the chaos with silence and professionalism. For every lie they told, I'd built something lasting. One evening, months later, I got another letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly, Mom's looping cursive. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Ryan, I don't expect forgiveness. Your father and I are ashamed of what we did. We let pride ruin everything. We see that now. We're sorry, not for losing what we had, but for losing you. If you ever find it in your heart to visit, the door will always be open. Love, Mom." I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't reply either. Some things are better left in silence. Weeks passed. Life found rhythm again. I focused on work, spent weekends with people who actually cared about me, friends who never once questioned my worth. For the first time, I wasn't living to prove anything. I was just living. One Saturday morning, I drove out to see Grandma. Her health had declined a bit, but she still had that same spark in her eyes. She was sitting on the porch when I arrived, a blanket over her knees and tea steaming beside her. "I heard about the letter," she said softly. "Are you going to see them?" I shook my head. "No, I think we're done, Grandma." She nodded slowly. Sometimes letting go is the only revenge that lasts. We sat together in silence for a while, watching the sky turn gold. Then she looked at me and smiled faintly. "You know, your father always thought power meant control, but you learned something he never did." "What's that?" I asked. "That real power," she said, "is being able to walk away and never look back." I smiled. "Maybe that's the lesson I needed all along." She chuckled softly. "You always were the strong one, Ryan. They just couldn't see it." That night, as I drove home, the city lights shimmered on the horizon, the same skyline I used to look at when I was broke and determined to make something of myself. Except this time, there was no hunger, no resentment, just peace. Before heading in, I took one last detour, down a familiar street lined with maple trees. My parents' old house still stood there, lights off, windows dark, for sale sign out front. The same home they'd lost trying to teach me a lesson about pride. I parked across the street, engine idling, and just watched. Memories flickered. The dinners, the arguments, that awful night they announced I wasn't family. Then I smiled, not out of bitterness, but clarity. Some victories don't need witnesses. I rolled down the window, let the cool night air in, and whispered quietly to myself. They finally made me proud. Then I drove away, leaving the house, and everything it stood for, behind me for good.